Let's talk about the surprisingly dark history behind this dress and the implications of putting it on Christine Daae in the Phantom of the Opera. Hi, it's Jessica, Phantom Author, and your friendly local Phantom of the Opera TikTok historian. And this video comes with a warning. I'm going to talk about the history of this dress, which I think anyone will enjoy, but then I'm going to get pretty critical of the 2004 movie. But I'm not here to yuck anyone's yum or tell you you're wrong for liking it, so I'll give you a warning before I make that turn, and you can always scroll ahead. And trigger warning for discussion of eating disorders. Let's talk about the dress first. Christine's Think of Me dress is a copy of a dress worn by the Empress Elizabeth of Austria in this famous portrait by Franz Xaver Winterhalter in 1867. Also known as Sisi, Empress Elizabeth was one of the most famous beauties of the 19th century, and one of its most tragic figures as well. Sisi was married at age 17 to Emperor Franz Joseph of Austria. She was smart, poetic, and romantic, but she was defined by her great beauty. And eventually her own obsession with the way society perceived her destroyed her, or made her miserable. She spent most of her life trying to maintain her thinness and beauty, engaging in what we would now call disordered eating and suffering from what we would term body dysmorphia. She starved herself and corseted her waist down to 16 inches. That's like my head. And eventually it retreated entirely from public life, as well as she suffered many tragedies revolving her family, before meeting her own tragic end in 1898. There's an entire musical about her, and I encourage you to look her up. So why put Christine in a dress matching this historical figure? Here's where the criticism starts. Now, I can't criticize that this dress is like a decade off in terms of fashion, because none of the fashion or costumes in this movie are historically accurate, and they aren't trying to be. But even in the context of the film, it's weird. Hannibal is an opera set in the 3rd century BC in the north of Africa, which you see reflected in the costumes at the beginning. But then for Think of Me, Christine is just standing there in this weird dress. It is an aesthetic decision to make a pretty picture. Even the backdrops match this portrait. And this whole movie is based on things that just look pretty. But it does a huge disservice to Christine as a character to do that. And associating her with Sisi, it reinforces this. Emmy Rossum was not cast for her vocal prowess, let's be honest. She was cast for her looks, and because she was young. Too young for the role, actually. Christine shouldn't be 17, but they cast a 17-year-old, leading me to have to argue with people for decades about Christine's age. But Sisi herself was married at 17, same age Emmy was when this movie was made. And she was seen as nothing more than a pretty face, not allowed to be a full person, which led her to a lifetime of struggles and misery. By putting Christine in this dress, they're saying the quiet part out loud, saying that all they value this character for is her looks and her youth, the way that's all that people value Sisi for. And that's a horrible way to treat this character and this actor. For the sake of making a pretty picture, they're putting an actress in a dress that is historically and dramaturgically inaccurate to connect her to a woman who was reduced to nothing more than a pretty picture. And there are so many levels of irony to that. They're doing unintentionally to Christine what was done to Cece all her life, and to Emmy Rossum. And so the truth behind this pretty dress is pretty ugly. As always, let me know if you have questions or comments. See you later.
Hello, it's me, Kevin Vonesper. If you're watching this, you have found a phantom. It's this. This is the show, Found a Phantom. Today, oh, yeah, we've been off for a little bit. Welcome back. I do this show a little irregularly, but hey, get your phantom content when you can, right? I'm back. We got another great episode with a guest who I've wanted to get on the show ever since I discovered her, but I had to wait a minute because I had to read the book first, so I know what I'm talking about. And you know what? I can watch movies a lot faster than I read books, so I had to make sure it was the right time. I finished the book this week, and I think next week I'll have a whole nother one that I'm going to have to read, right? Yes. We're going to talk about that and a lot more. I got some random sort of phantom topic props all around me. Of course, I'm live from the glorious Palais Garnier in Paris. Yeah, right. Maybe more like the suburbs of New York City, but shh, don't tell anybody. And of course, if you're in the chat, say hello, ask some questions, interact with us. It's always more fun with an audience. Thanks for those who requested off from work today to make it for the show. I hope you enjoy it. On Found a Phantom. Found a phantom, found a phantom, found a phantom. Hello, Jessica.
Hi!
Welcome to the show.
It's great to be here.
Yes, thanks for being here. Yeah, I definitely, when I see a fellow phantom total nerd on the internet somewhere, That's what this show is for. So I can, I
Yay!
don't talk to normal everyday people about Phantom of the Opera when I go out. So this is like my opportunity to just nerd out with
It's
people.
your opportunity. Sorry.
Oh,
Sorry, I have a pun problem, so apologies in advance for the puns.
wow. It's gonna take a minute to recover from that one.
Sorry.
Do you do you use puns in your books?
I
I wasn't
I
gonna ask that question, but
I try not to. Because I have a very bad pun problem in real life, and I try and keep the books a bit more
maybe
serious.
you use them on your TikToks more
Yeah, I
often?
use them on
Yeah.
TikToks when I can. And now that there's like a replacement for Twitter, I've been making a lot of puns on like threads. Um,
Yeah.
cause like, but
What do you what do you think of Threads so far? I
it's better than Twitter, which that's a low bar.
Yeah, that's true. I think I've used Threads more than I've ever used Twitter already, and I don't
Yeah,
know why. Like, do I need another social media? I don't know. I
probably
guess
not,
we'll find
but
out.
yeah,
I
it's been
still haven't
fun.
caught up to TikTok. Like, TikTok's too new for me.
TikTok I enjoy TikTok a lot because I just get to be nerdy and
Well,
share my
yeah,
nerdery with people.
that's where you post most of your content.
Yeah,
It's basically made for TikTok and then shared, you
yeah.
know, from there. Um, I guess that's a good place to start. Why TikTok for you?
Well, because I was on Twitter a lot in my wild youth, and it was awful. And just
I just
TikTok's such
never
a
got
great,
it.
yeah.
I worked I'm sorry to cut you off. I worked in social media. I worked for the company that I feel like is responsible for destroying MySpace.
Hmm.
So while I was there for like the 2 years, Twitter came out, and even in the social media company, I was like, this is stupid. I don't get it.
Yeah,
That's my little mini rant.
I was on Tumblr a lot, um, and then Twitter, but I had this book out, and I wanted to get people to read the book. And book talk is such a big thing, and
Mm.
people really find content through TikTok, and it's got like the potential to reach more people through the FYP, and so that's been really great. I've been able to sell some books through there and get a good community going there much faster than I've been able to like find a Phantom foothold other places. So it's been nice.
What do you I don't know. I don't even know what the right question to ask here is, but how do you use TikTok to your advantage? Is it the hashtags? Is it like, like the video we just saw, you said
Yeah,
caught a lot of traction.
that one, like, I don't know what happened with that one where it got just, I woke up one day, I'm like, wow, this has 60,000 views, and it kept going through the roof. And just sometimes things will just catch in the algorithm. It seems sometimes when I talk about the 2004 movie, it catches in the algorithm a bit more.
Very
Um,
controversial topic, huh?
yeah, it's a
Yeah.
controversy.
I
And
don't think
people,
it's that controversial.
I mean, I,
I mean, I think I agree with you on everything you've said that I've seen.
yeah, I don't want to like say anyone's wrong for liking it. It wasn't
No.
my favorite version, but yeah, it's got some good stuff. It's
I
got some.
mean, I remember going to the theater to see it when it came out, and I was like, well, I guess I have to love this because I've waited my whole life for it. But then 20 years later, you're like, you know what? It's pretty flawed. There's some casting questionable choices, some color
Uh,
choices.
yeah, just a
Yeah.
lot of choices were made.
You know what I want to see? I want to see the full on, and I was reviewing your TikTok a lot today, so this came up. I want to see the fully campy version as originally shown in the music
Oh my god,
video for
yeah.
Phantom of the Opera in 1985. I want to see the full blown campy, crazy colors. I don't know, cocaine
Uh,
Broadway musical that it always should have been.
that
Probably wouldn't have been as
video, the
successful, but
I love that video. It's just because I'm old by internet terms, and so like I was a fan before we had YouTube, before we had easy access to
same to
you
me.
know
Yeah.
when we would trade VHS tapes over like
I have my bootleg Michael Crawford VHS, my
yeah.
bootleg Paul Stanley VHS. Yes,
Through
and
the
these
mail. People had to send this through the mail. But yeah, I'd watch that video over and over again because it was like the only way you could like watch Michael Crawford. And
right. Yeah, it's true. And I have to tell this to anybody because this, in some communities, it's like cool to collect VHS now.
Oh
But
no,
I
because
have
it's
to say, like, I'm proud of my VHS collection. But when I bought those movies, it was the only way to get those movies. I didn't do it to have a
yeah,
VHS collection. That just happened naturally later once it became retro. This was the
yeah,
current media at the time.
it was. Remember finding it at Borders, which is a show store that no longer
Borders, yes. Well, I worked at Barnes and
exists.
Nobles, I guess. I think those are still around.
Yeah, and they're around.
Yeah. Um,
But yeah,
Speaking of that, I know I always like ruminate on this show about like a Phantom of the Opera movie, either proper book
mhm,
Leroux version or maybe a remake of the musical.
yeah.
I know Ryan Johnson said he's wanted to do it. I think we
Oh,
should
I'd
just give
love
it
him.
to him.
I love Ryan Johnson. See, of course, like I'm like I want to, I envision my own books as like in my head, of course, it's like an HBO
Well, I'm gonna
series,
ask
with
about
like
that for sure.
every episode is. But I think Ryan would be great. He's an awesome director. He
Yeah,
loves musicals. Um, I don't
yeah.
know if you were a Game of Thrones fan,
I
but
watched it once it was over just to catch up with the culture and to be
um,
like, that's the Phantom. When
oh yeah, Charles
Yeah,
Dance,
whenever
but
Charles Dance was there, I was like, that's the Phantom, yay.
he's so great. One of my favorite writers on Game of Thrones, though, was like a friend. I follow him on the Twitter, and he wrote some of the best episodes, and one of the best music based scenes in an episode. And he loves Phantom, and I want him to, create a
Wait, an
Phantom
episode of what?
of Game of Thrones.
Oh,
So do you in
there was a
season
musical episode?
not a musical episode, but in the final season, the
Like
only
Buffy?
the only really good episode of the final season was A Knight of the Seven Kingdoms, the one where Brienne gets knighted. And there's that wonderful sequence at the end where Pod is singing Jenny's song. And this is that musical kind of montage right before the Night King attacks. And it's really great. But Ryan Cogman says it's like that's the closest he got to using, making Game of Thrones the musical.
Oh wow, he directed that?
He wrote it. So
Oh,
I
okay. I
think,
didn't know that he had
yeah, I think
involvement
Miguel
with that.
Sapochnik directed it. But yeah.
Well, I'd love for him to do a musical movie, but I actually think he should just do a series based on
Mhm.
the novel because he's good at mystery stuff. Like I
Yeah.
just watched Poker Face and
Mhm.
it's like kind of a mystery show. He's good at it.
Yeah. I would just love to see a version of Phantom made nowadays with like a deformity that's actually what it looks like in the book. Like we had Voldemort with no nose,
Mhm.
like, you know,
The
can't
technology is
get
there,
off his
yeah.
nose. Green screen off somebody's nose.
Yeah, exactly. Um, you were saying that you imagine your novel as like a film or a series. Have you casted this in your head, or how far
Um,
have you gotten with that?
Obviously Tom Hiddleston is my go-to like Dreamcast for Eric because I'm just a Loki fangirl. I don't know if you can see like my shelf of Lokis back
Oh,
there.
yes.
I have a large
Hmm.
collection of Lokis.
Can he sing?
Yeah, he sings in the Loki show a little bit.
Oh, yeah,
It's better than Gerard
that's
Butler.
fair.
um, and like for other cast, it's really hard to find people who could sing.
Yeah,
And
you probably have to overdub some people.
though I have a young daughter, and so I've seen all the Descendants movies a lot, and I think like Sophia Carson actually would be a really nice casting as Christine. She's got a beautiful voice, and she's a lovely young actress, so I think she'd be a cool casting there.
Hmm. For your novel or for a
Or
Phantom movie?
for any version,
For any version?
Yeah.
Gotcha. Um, what is your Phantom origin story? I'm gonna try. I mean, it's gonna be hard to ask you questions that aren't already on your TikTok. We're gonna cover a little bit of the same ground, I'm sure, but
I don't think anyone's asked me this on
oh,
TikTok though.
yes.
I think I talked about it maybe once, but I saw Phantom the first time when I was like 9. My mom took me to see the tour in Portland, Oregon, and I really liked it. And then she took me again a few years later when it came to Seattle, and I was just like on the cusp of teenagerdom.
Mm.
And it was the tour with Rick Hillsbeck was the Phantom, and I just like was obsessed. And I think I have the poster up here is like the what I got there.
Oh,
You know,
nice.
they were selling them for $45 in the lobby, and
Gotta make a buck.
you know,
It is a business above all else.
I was talking on TikTok today about, yeah, we used to have these things called CDs, and I remember like begging
Yeah, I
my
saw that.
mom. So, because like, you know, the double album was like $35. That's a lot of dollars in
Yo, there's a
1996.
reason Tower Records went out of business, even though I
I
missed
got
it.
it at Tower
Yeah, I bet you did.
Records. Yeah. And I just watched it over and over again. And then luckily, when in the 90s, early 2000s, my dad had a job where he went to New York a lot. And so I got to tag along and see the show in New York quite a few times. And I loved the music, and I started singing. And my goal in college was like, well, I want to play Christine. And so I got a degree in opera, super useful.
Right.
And like I wanted to do musical theater. And then the movie came out in 2004 when I was in college. And I'm like, oh my God. I was just,
Wah,
I was kind
wah.
of dismayed by that. And I ended up going through a lot of other different careers. But in college, I also started writing. I was like, there's no story of Phantom that the story is fully what I
I
want it
was
to
in
be. So
college in 2004 too, I think. So I think we're about the same age.
yeah. And so I started rewriting my own version of it. And it was, you know, I wrote it in sophomore year of college. It wasn't great. But I poured out this giant novel in a few months. And then after the, you know, various careers, I kind of came back to it in 2012 after the 25th anniversary came out. And it reminded me how much I love Phantom. And then I went through a few other fandoms and stuff. And then I was a journalist, and I wrote for some websites and did a lot of fandom journalism. And I had 2 books out that are nonfiction books. And then like, I just wanted to, I was tired of writing about other people's stories. And I'm like, let's go back to the stuff I wrote. And I had this idea, I'm like, oh, I'll just polish off the thing I wrote. And
I was gonna
then
say, how much of that did actually carried over?
about like 10-15% of the manuscript from 2012 like made it into the one.
Was it as I don't know what word to use here. Was it as exciting?
No, I definitely made it more
Let's
exciting
make this
because
try to be YouTube friendly, but I don't know how. Just so you guys know out there, this is gonna be a not as safe for work podcast.
yeah, it's a very because like I've been trying to sell it as like literary fiction, and I said, what if, you know, what's selling and what's popular is romance? I'm like, well, I'll just make it more romantic. And that was actually made it much more fun to write. And you know, I've been in fandom, so I've been writing fanfic for a long time, so I like that sort of thing.
Yeah. I mean, I know you've kind of spoke about this on TikTok. Do you like or dislike referring to this as fan fiction?
I mean, everything is fan fiction. You
It
know,
really is. Yeah.
Hamilton is fan fiction. Andrew Lloyd
Sure.
Webber's Phantom is fan
Yeah.
fiction. You know,
Love Never Dies
Ulysses
is
is
fan fiction of fan fiction.
yeah. You know, James Joyce's Ulysses is Odyssey fan fiction. So you know, Dante's Inferno is
Right.
Aeneid fan fiction. Like it's all.
But there is
There's
like a
no.
specific community that had emerged, right? Because so that I do want to talk to you about that because I kind of skipped that whole scene. I don't know much about it. I never really read like the fanfic stuff.
Like in Phantom or just anywhere.
Anywhere, you know.
Yes, I remember I read Phantom fanfic like as a teen, even before fanfic.net existed. And I remember reading some when fanfic.net came out. And I've read some on AO3. Do any of these terms make sense? Do you know what
I think
these
I've heard of
websites are?
fanfic.net, but no. I'm sure some people listening know what you're talking about.
Because like for a long time, you know, fanfic wasn't centralized. You had to find it in certain places. And Phantom fanfic, it wasn't as much of a problem because, you know, in the early days of the internet, people like Anne Rice were threatening to sue fanfic authors, and people were very touchy about it. But in like the late 2010s or late aughts, early 2010s, Archive of Our Own was founded, and it had like some legal protections in place to protect authors, and it really allowed fanfic to thrive. And I was in the fanfic community for Supernatural, which is a whole other.
I don't know much about that, but I know you wrote a book about it.
Yeah, I wrote a book about Supernatural. And Supernatural is the reason we have Alpha Beta Omega fanfic. If anyone knows what that is, either you're welcome or I'm sorry. But
Sure.
but yeah, it's a very vibrant fanfic community there, and it's one of those things where like the fanfic's better than the show.
Right. Did you was there specific phantoms that were prominent in the phantom fiction? There's like a lot of syllables
I think
there.
it was like Michael Crawford was sort of just the
default
apex. People were writing, and you were like, oh, well, that's based on Michael Crawford. And for the longest time, like Susan Kay's Phantom was sort of seen as the Bible, and people just based everything off of that. And I started really disliking that.
Okay, good. Let's talk about this. I did want to bring up like the big, I guess you would call this the first.
Yeah, the first Phantom novel.
The beyond the original, right? I gotta tell you, I've never finished this book. I've started it like 4 times, and I hate it so much every single time. And I know this is very controversial, but I hate this book. Well, I guess at one point I got this far into it because I have a page marked. So that's pretty
fine.
far.
Like, it gets worse the farther in you go.
I almost finished it. I have to, as a fan, just like know what's in here at some point, so I can watch those plays based on it that I have sitting on my shelf that I've never seen. Have you watched those?
No, there's plays.
Oh my God, yes, they are. I want to get the country right. It's an Asian country. I forget which one.
Oh my goodness.
And so the whole cast is men, because I guess women are not allowed on stage in that country or something like that. And there's 4 performances in this box set. There's 2 plays that they did based on each half of this novel, and then it's 2 casts doing each one. So there's 2 performances of each. Yeah, it's a whole thing. You never haven't heard of this one? I think
I've not. I missed that somehow.
Let's see if I can find a trailer for it. Yeah, and it's been sitting on my shelf for years because I want to read the source material before I watch like a language that I can't understand for a couple hours,
Yeah, I read that as like a teen, and
what's your opinion? Yeah,
I loved it as a teenager because it was like the only thing I had now as like an informed adult and also a queer adult. Like, I'm not a fan of the racism and homophobia in that book. Those sort of.
I don't remember it, but I believe it. I believe it because what I remember from it is very heavy religious undertones, and I didn't like that.
Yeah, and I feel like the first, like, and I said this on TikTok, like, I think the character of Eric's really strong. Like, he's a really interesting character, but a lot of the other stuff is not so great. Like I said, I think it's pretty racist in its treatment of the Romani people. It's pretty homophobic. And then the first half is fine, like up to Persia, but then I hate everything with Christine. She's awful.
It's Korean.
Hi, Anna.
So I don't know if there's a trailer, but I won't play the whole thing, but I can skip through it. There's a Phantom review. Remember the Phantom Reviewer?
Yeah.
Yeah, I love the Phantom Reviewer. He did an episode on it, so I can maybe skip through just to show a couple to get a sense of what it is. Yes, the weirder the better for Phantom stuff, and this is definitely a weird one right here.
Okay. Oh my goodness.
Let me turn the sound off. Oops, can I full screen this? There we go. Oh, the quality's not so good.
This is some okay production design, though.
I can't tell which one's okay. This is the actual play, I think. Yeah, so they're all played by men, and it's all based on the Susan Kay novel. How crazy is that?
I'm sure they got the rights for this in a legitimate way.
Sure. Oh, look, there's the Phantom.
Oh, there's the weird thing with the shepherd. Like, I hate that part.
See, I'm not. I gotta read it at some point. Somebody make me read this book.
No,
Can somebody be on my show and like counter argument why you think this book is so great? Why is this canon in the community?
I just think it's because it was the first.
I missed the Phantom Reviewer. Come back, dude. You can be on the show anytime. I was his only
um,
Patreon for a long time, so you just send me videos
mhm.
privately.
Yeah, but one of the things I dislike the most about Susan Kay's Phantom is how she treats Christine in general. But like the reason that Eric falls for Christine, and sorry guys, spoilers for a 30-year-old book, is because she looks exactly like his mom.
Oh,
And
yeah.
it's like, why? And that's one of the reasons I wrote my books, because a lot of versions of Phantom like start, like the Angel and Weber or the LaRue, where it's Christine's debut and she's already had the Angel of Music as her teacher for a while. And I wanted to be like, why did he fall in love with her? Why did he care about her in the first place? What did he see worth helping about her? And I didn't want her to be like, she's just pretty, or she just has a pretty voice. I wanted her to be a person.
Right.
And so that's sort of what Angel's Mask is, the bulk of it is about, is like how he becomes an angel and why.
Yeah, let me ask you this, I guess.
Yeah.
You kind of are already going there, but I'd ask formally, like, what compels somebody to make their own Phantom of the Opera? Like, my version of that is doing this show where I just talk about it. So
I am a perfectionist, and I just have that kind of like, well, if it's not right, I'll do it myself sort of Capricorn attitude. And I have ADHD and hyperfixation, so it's just like, okay, well, there's no version of it that's doing what I need it to do, so I'm just going to do it myself and kind of try and fix problems that I see in other versions.
but this is both, I mean, sort of more reinterpreted from the original novel than more than anything else, right?
Yeah, I
You
mean,
would say.
I took a lot of there's a lot of Easter eggs for other
Right.
versions of Phantom, but like the only version I'm using for plot beats is LaRue, because that's the only one in the public domain. And
That's true. Yes, legally you have to
yeah,
say that, right?
yeah.
So here's a question I have about it. I know, and this is the thing I love most about your TikTok, is how deep you go into like the history of the real, anything behind the original novel. There's a lot of detail put into your work based on that research. I would have thought that you would have been maybe more loyal to the original story than you had been. Like, you did make him. I know I'm sure it's interchangeable, but a white mask and not so blonde hair for Christine, things like that.
Yeah, well, like I am just because in my mind he always has a white mask, even though I know in LaRue he has a black mask. It's
Right,
just,
that's the thing that I'm like, why does everybody get that wrong?
and that's just my own imagination. I can't change the way it is. For
Sure.
Christine, there's actually like a reason in book 2 why she sort of revealed that she has darker hair. And also, again, because in my mind, Christine looks like Christine in the show. Though I tried to keep her kind of ambiguous because I wanted people to be able to envision her as they like. But like, I feel the way I want people to be able to read this is like, oh, what if this was, what really happened? Like, there are a lot of scenes that are sort of take a scene from LaRue and use the words or turn it on its head. So you'll be like, oh, that's what was happening there. And there's a lot more of that in book 2 because it's all takes place within the LaRue story. Only about 25% of book 1, or maybe 50% of book 1 takes place during LaRue. And so, yeah, and I like, if I wanted it to be exactly true to the original, you could just reread the original. You gotta
Yeah, I'm just curious, like,
be
where
creative.
you draw the line between like the realistic elements and then like the story that you're creating as an
Yeah,
original piece.
it's funny, like in some cases you have to sort of just be like, okay, I'm doing, you have to just do what you want to do and not be
Yeah,
too
sure.
worried about it. Like I was also thinking, I try and be really true to, how would this actually work in terms of, Eric's house or something? Like, how would he have plumbing, or how would he have a fireplace that doesn't fill his house with smoke and give him carbon monoxide poisoning? And at a certain point, I'm like, you know what? Gaston Leroux didn't care about that.
Because he's a genius.
Yeah, it's fine. He just like, he has a chimney. It works somehow.
Yeah. That's what about what was I gonna ask about this? Oh no, I lost my train of thought. Did you plan this as a certain number of books from the beginning, or is it?
It's always been like a 3-part story, and I always like and had the different 3-act structure and make this sort of triptych. Though the 3rd book in the series, which will be out next year, will like end where Leroux ends, pretty much.
Mm-hmm.
But I know what happens to them afterwards, so there may be a 4th kind of sequel-y thing eventually.
Right. Hey, why not? Was there any so again, I'm like kind of lost on like what people would call fan fiction books. Were there any particular ones that were like impactful to you in the past? Or
I haven't read a lot. I've read Susan Kay. I read The Angel of the Opera by Sam Siciliano, which is like the Sherlock Holmes.
Yeah, I have that one. I think there's 2 Sherlock Holmes actual ones.
There's a
That's
few.
one of them.
And because like again, I was such a fan like in the early days when there weren't a lot of books out there.
Yeah.
And I know there are a lot now. When I decided to publish this, I didn't realize
a little overwhelming to me.
How
I'm like,
many they were.
This is like one of the first ones I've ever read of that kind of new, I guess what you would call new school fan.
Yeah.
Fiction, whatever.
And I have a lot of friends who have read or bought like every Phantom book that are out there, and there's hundreds.
Yeah.
And like the biggest compliment I've gotten is people saying, "Oh, this is my favorite," and I've read a lot. I'm like, "Oh, good," because I didn't realize there's so much competition.
Right. Yeah. This kind of like opens me up into a whole world that I don't have time for. It's like, how am I going to read 100 books? Like, I can't even get through my Phantom DVD collection. It's nuts.
Just read this one.
Yeah. No. Well, I did. I started it, so I'm going to have to finish it.
And but now I have a new one that's coming out in like 4 days.
Right. So now it's what I mean. Like now I'm going to have to follow up on this. I finished this the other night, just in time.
Oh, good.
Yes.
I hope you like it.
Yeah. Well, me, the more Phantoms, the merrier. Like just keep them coming. Why not?
Yeah, and like I do, and all the Phantoms are in there. Like most of the movie Phantoms have characters named after them, which I had a lot of fun with.
In this one or the next one or both?
So there's like there were the main English language Phantoms that have been in movies in movie theaters, so no Phantom of the Megaplex, unfortunately, or Phantom of the Mall. But like I've got like a
Pauly Shore Phantom. I mean, he wasn't the Phantom, but
like there's a character named after Lon Chaney. There's a character named after Claude Rains. There's a character named after Julian Sands. Rest in peace for him.
Yes, I was gonna have to bring that up at some point because I haven't had a show since this happened. But as much as we joke about how the Rat Phantom is R.I.P. officially confirmed Julian Sands, he is one of them, so we have to give him the respect.
Yeah, that's absolutely tragic. But I'm glad that they confirmed that, so his family has some peace of mind.
That's sad. I mean, didn't he do a no? He was in the Highlander series, right?
I don't know, but he was in a lot of like Merchant Ivory. He was on the L Word for like 3 episodes.
Yeah, I didn't watch the L Word. Although I should. I'm sure it's great.
It's the first 2 seasons are fine.
Okay.
Then it goes off the rails.
But he is a Phantom that we all, as much as we hate it, I bet you we all own a copy of it, so it worked, right?
I don't know if I own a copy of that one. I think it was on Netflix for a while, and that's where
I will say, if you're a fan of just film in general, the transfer of this film onto Blu-ray is beautiful.
Really?
You could watch it for just that alone. It doesn't make it a better movie, but at least it looks better. You know,
Yeah.
and I feel like we definitely need a Blu-ray version of this, because why is this not like, this is such a fan favorite and it's stuck on DVD like discolored and dark and no commentary. What's up? Terry Polo's still alive. Charles Dance is still alive. Let's do this.
Yeah, that'd be beautiful. And then again, there hasn't been a new Phantom movie for like 19 years. We need something.
It's got to happen soon, right? I remember
Yeah.
again when I saw Phantom 2004, I was like, damn, this is like, it's going to be another 20 years before we get anything as big as this, whether it's the musical or otherwise. It's about that time, Hollywood.
Come on, Hollywood.
It's time to gather me, Jessica, and a couple other of the nerds out there to consult. Hire us to consult your Phantom film.
There was a Phantom-y episode of Supernatural. That's like where
Really?
my interest,
I'm not sure if I've seen that.
So it's very subtle. It's season 4, episode 5. Episode 6 is called Monster Movie.
Do I need context to enjoy the episode?
Not really. It's a pretty good standalone episode, and it is a
like a monster of the
homage to
week.
the Universal monster. So it's in black and white.
Okay. I think I have heard of this, yeah.
And the monster is a shapeshifter who feels like a monster, and so he takes on the face of Dracula or the Wolfman to kind of feel special, and he falls in love with a pretty girl and kidnaps her, and so in its way it's its own little Phantom story, and there are Phantom references on there.
Nice. I'll have to check that out. Maybe we'll do a special episode about it at some point.
And it sort of gets
Angie Brown says hello.
Hi. It sort of gets forgotten because the episode after it in season 4 is one of the best episodes of Supernatural ever. It's called Yellow Fever, and it's hysterical. But Monster Movie season 4 is great. It's really a fun episode too, and it's cool because it's in black and white. It's very meta.
Another crossover, and you're sort of like, I believe you also wrote a similar book about the Marvel Cinematic Universe.
Yeah.
So when that Thor movie with the Phantom shirt, did you like?
I know. I could do a Valkyrie cosplay so easily.
Yeah.
I wish that.
Tell me, like, how did that come about? You know, sidestepping Phantom for a minute.
Because one of the writers of Thor: Love and Thunder came into the writer's room in a Phantom sweater, and Taika Waititi was like, "That would be a great thing for Valkyrie."
Oh no, I mean your book.
Oh, how did that come out?
Yeah, no. But thank you for that context as well.
Yeah, the Supernatural one or the Marvel one, like both.
Well, I guess either of them. They're sort of similarly themed, right? Like
I was just like, I had been contacted by a publisher about a different book idea, and I saw they had this Binge Watchers series, and I'm like, oh, I could write a Supernatural Binge Watchers guide in my sleep. And it turned out to be a very, very long book because it's a very, very long show.
How many seasons?
15.
Wow. Yikes. That's a ride.
327 episodes.
Wow.
And at least 300 of them are pretty good.
Oh, that's pretty good. That's pretty good record.
Pretty good. And then once that was done, I pitched the idea of doing a Marvel version because I had some like time on my hands. Like, oh, that'd be kind of fun to do because somebody had done. There's another one in the series on like the Harry Potter movies, and so I just did it up through Endgame. It ends.
I was gonna say, where's the limit? Because now there's all the TV shows and all the stuff coming out.
It's just the Infinity Saga, and it doesn't cover any of the TV shows.
Gotcha. So, speaking of, well, it's not connected exactly to the cinematic universe, but have you found, the thesis of the show, Found a Phantom, is if you found a phantom in pop culture anywhere, just when you weren't looking, has anything popped up? And I haven't seen it yet, but apparently there is a phantom in the new Spider-Man multiverse movie. So that's my Found a Phantom for this week.
I mean, I've seen Across the Spider-Verse. I don't know.
The new one that just came out.
It's so good. If you haven't seen it, it's so good.
Well, I think he swings through Times Square or something, and there's like a phantom poster in the background. I saw a still of it, but I haven't seen the movie.
It's an incredible just movie in general.
The first one was great, yeah.
Yeah, the Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness was very Phantom-y to me. Have you seen that one?
Doctor Strange, yeah, because Sam Raimi directed it, and I love my
Yeah.
Evil Dead movies.
And he's like, he turns into a smart-ass corpse at some point. He's fighting over a woman named Christine.
Hmm.
And the fight they have with like when they're using the music notes, that was just like if the Phantom was a superhero, I feel like that would have been.
I call it Evil Dead, the Marvel edition, which is great for me. The more Evil Dead, the better, especially Sam Raimi and Bruce Campbell.
Yeah.
You know, if you're a fan of those movies, you'll know that he's also in all of his Marvel movies and everything.
He lives here in Oregon, by the way.
Oh, yeah?
Bruce Campbell, he lives like out in...
I did know that, yeah. My friend lives near him, or Asheville or something like that, I think.
Yeah. Ashland,
Yeah.
or
Ashland, yeah, there it
that's
is.
where our
Something.
Shakespeare Festival is, yeah.
Um,
I drove through there 2 days ago.
oh, nice. Yeah, that's where my friend lives.
I'm trying to think of other like random places. Well, the other day we came back from a vacation and we're walking through the Portland airport, which is a very nice airport, and they have like a piano player. And they're playing piano. I had to just turn to my wife and be like, will you confirm for me that they're playing music of the night and it's not just like Phantom slipping out of my brain into the...
It's School Days.
Oh, you're quoting French Kiss, School Days.
The song that he ripped off, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, that happened to me also when I was a teenager. I was walking home and I just started hearing the overture to Phantom.
And it was Pink Floyd?
No, I was just like, I finally snapped. I just hear the overture randomly walking through my neighborhood, and it turned out to be the marching band at the high school was practicing it.
Nice.
But it was just
it's like your theme music. When you walk by, people have to play Phantom songs.
Exactly. Yeah.
Did you start singing?
Probably. Yeah.
In the airport?
Not in the airport.
Oh.
But, I was tired. It was like 9 o'clock at night.
Yeah. Becky Laugh is here. What's up, Becky? Hi. Speaking of people who make Phantom stories, and go check out her comic book, of course. Does your wife love Phantom, or she just tolerate it, or what's the deal there?
She tolerates it.
Yeah.
She likes it. She like, I'm much more the artsy one, but she is like the one who gets to like read the books. Like she's my first reader all the time.
So is it interesting to have like a non-Phantom fan background perspective from her?
Yeah, because I want to make sure that like the books are like accessible to everyone. So I'm like, does this make sense?
Not so much children, maybe.
Yeah, not so much children. My daughter's like, why can't I read your books? I'm like, sorry. No.
Well, do you have a copy on hand near you?
I can grab it, yeah.
Yeah. So I like to highlight things in my books if I wanted to talk about them. I didn't really highlight anything in your book because it was more of an overall discussion, but this was the first line that really stood out to me, and I want to tell you where it is so I don't have to say it out loud. It's page 90.
Okay.
And it's the last sentence of the first new paragraph. So if you have the book, anyone in the audience, you can go reference that yourself. I'm not gonna say it here on YouTube.
That's
but I was just like, oh, okay.
Yeah.
This is the book.
Yeah.
Is that prevalent in other fan fictions communities, or is this the spiciest so far?
I don't know. I mean, I read spicy romance, and it's pretty normal for romance.
Okay, yeah. I did work in Barnes and Nobles. I remember the section. There was lots of Fabio.
Yeah, and so it's it's pretty standard, I'd say, for like a romance book. And also, I mean, like I've read spicy things like that in non-romance books.
Sure.
Like there's certainly some spicy content, in The Song of Ice and Fire. Not quite that spicy, but
right. Well, those are not for children so much.
Yeah, those aren't for children either.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Good. Well, it's I think it's funny too. I mean, you gotta laugh at yourself a little bit. Right?
But again, like I come from the very weird side of fanfic.
What does that mean? I mean, like this kind of stuff.
No, I mean like it gets way weirder. It gets way stranger. There's no tentacles.
I was just gonna say, yeah. At least it's not hentai.
Yeah, there's only 2 people involved.
Right.
no one has turned into any sort of creature. No, Eric is not getting pregnant, which happens a lot.
Eric
Well,
getting pregnant?
no, like men getting pregnant, because so much
Really?
of
That's a
fanfic
whole
is.
thing?
Oh, it's a whole
Where does
thing.
it come? I don't even know if I want to know.
It's just going off the rails.
Well,
So,
you wrote the spicy Phantom novel. This is where it's going.
a lot of fanfic, because so much content that generates fandom is only like there's 10 men and 1 female. A lot of it is queer, and so but people still want to read stories about their favorite male couples, sometimes having babies, and so sometimes Dean Winchester's been pregnant a lot in fanfic.
Does it skip like how it escapes the body, or
there people are very creative.
Yeah, okay, that's fair. That's good.
Yeah.
Yeah,
But
no babies in this book.
no babies.
Um, I think maybe we should talk about the original novel a little bit, and maybe
Sure.
this will be a fun question.
Mhm.
In your interpretation of it, are there queer characters in the original novel? And
I
are the
mean,
managers those characters?
yeah, the managers are obviously
It's
very
supposed to
gay.
be that, right?
Yeah, I don't know. I don't think LaRue like intended anyone to be queer, but literally the author is dead, so we can read whatever you want into it. In my book,
I'm
one of
sure there
the
were queer people in the arts in the opera house at the time,
yeah,
right?
like there's a lot of queer characters in my book, and I thought like, well,
Yeah,
there
it's
aren't
not as
actually much.
ambiguous in your book.
No, they're very, and one of the managers is one of those.
Right.
Um,
But it's
and
not with the other manager, right?
no, the
Someone
other
else.
manager is having his own
Right.
heterosexual affair, and so that's how he's can't be trusted.
Hmm.
And yeah, I just like I've been in the theater for a long time, and there's barely a straight person
Right,
anywhere.
exactly.
So, and so yeah, I thought it was important to me to make sure that there were queer characters and that there were non-white characters. But yeah, I think like in the original novel, definitely at least one of the managers statistically has to be.
Well, I mean, I guess this is technically a book club episode, although we picked like the shortest chapter
I
in
was
the
like
book.
reading them, like that was a short
I know,
chapter.
I didn't look at it beforehand. I was just like, well, that's the next chapter. Oh, it's 2 pages. Great.
Yeah.
And there's a specific, no matter what in translation you're reading, which is another question I'm going to have in a minute. It does, the managers do grasp each other in this chapter.
Yeah.
Some say by the shoulder, some say by the hand, but either way,
Well, one of the things
it
I
happens in this
like
chapter.
that I think is interesting about LaRue is how different it is in terms of the way men express emotion, contrary to what we see a lot in our culture. Because like Raoul cries all the time, and the managers are very emotional. Eric's very emotional. So is the Daroga. Like it's just a level of emotionality that's not seen very much in the way we portray men nowadays, in movies and television. And there's definitely some toxic masculinity in LaRue, but there's at least the men are definitely. Raoul's not afraid to cry, and I think that's nice. He cries for half the book.
So, I mean, I'm not well versed in other books from this time period. Is that a common thing for those characters at that time period, or is this?
It's definitely like in Gothic fiction, I think men are generally a bit more emotional. I think a good contemporary, even though it's like about 13 years before, is like Bram Stoker's Dracula. They're pretty, Jonathan Harker and Raoul would get along in terms of their weepiness and inseparableness.
All right, let's get a little nerdy as if we haven't already, but what translation did you read, or what do you have a preference in those? And I'm still kind of learning the difference. I just recently, this is a very recent acquisition, the David Coward, I heard is very good.
I haven't read that one. So this is like the first version of Phantom I ever bought. It's like
I have
the
that
Penguin
somewhere in my closet.
Classics. Yeah. I love and like this is like always going to be sort of what Eric looks like in my brain because of this cover. And this is just the
The
D'Amato's
D'Amatos,
translations,
yeah.
which is
If it
not
doesn't tell you, that's what it is.
and again in the public domain.
Right.
And the one I use like when I'm working is like this is the
Blair.
Little Bear.
Yeah.
And
I
so
have
it's
that
like
one
it's
in there.
really, I don't know if you can see like how highlighted.
It's hard to see in this light, but I believe you.
Let's see.
It
Yeah,
just,
very
oh yes, I
highlighted.
see it now, yes.
Lots of things. But my level of nerdy is one of the things that Phantom made me do is take many, many years of French.
Oh wow. See,
And
that's where I have my limitation. I can't
yeah.
read the original text.
And so I will like read like the D'Amato, and I also always have like D'Amatos as like because it's on Project Gutenberg, and so I have that bookmarked, and so I will like go and Control F for the phrase I'm looking for, read it in the original, and then find it
In
in
the
Bear,
translation.
and then I will go and I have the French like it's on a document or a free Kindle ebook, and I'll search for it in the French, and so I'll read it in the French. And like do my own kind of translation there. And so I always am like, making sure, how was this actually expressed in French? Because there's so many weird, there's a lot of choices like, was this really what they called someone or, and there's some things in the French that like don't translate at all.
And yeah, and it's very lyrical the way he wrote. Like,
Yeah.
I don't know how much that translates into English.
Yeah.
Which is not as pretty of a language, I'm sure.
My favorite weird translation, especially in the D'Amatos, is when he calls the version of booby.
Yeah, everyone loves that one, right?
And I went on like a deep dive on that. And
did you make a TikTok about it?
I did make a TikTok about this, and I'm like, well, TikTok even let this, exist because I say the word booby a lot. But it just means like a dum-dum.
Yeah.
And I found out that the booby, the bird, are called that because they're just idiots. And because the birds would like land on ships and just let themselves be caught and eaten, that the sailors just calling them boobies. So it's like the blue-footed dum-dum bird is what a blue-footed booby is.
Yeah, that is a fun one. What did you go back to the original text and retranslate that word for yourself?
Yeah, it's like some people just call it like an ass or idiot, but like what is it? Because this is also my friend got me this at the Paris Opera and sent it.
Yeah, I saw that.
She might be watching.
That's awesome.
Yeah, I don't. It's a pretty fun word. I think the word is like naif. It's not naif, but it's something that starts with an N, and I'm blanking on it right now.
If anyone in the chat, Jamie,
yeah,
pull it up. The one I've been reading mostly, although now I'm comparing it with this new, which I heard is like the best translation. I don't know if that's, who knows, right? Is the Leonard Wolf. Do you have this one, the complete?
Probably
the essential Phantom of the Opera. It's the reason it's not perfect, but it does have a lot of maybe too many footnotes. So there's a lot of detail to like, well, this phrase or this reference, and literally in this chapter, A Visit to Box 5, it references every single Greek like character that they reference on the walls and stuff.
Oh my gosh.
Which is like a little too much information.
It's a little bit
but
too much.
Some of it's really good. I guess we could dig into the chapter for a few minutes. This is book club. Yay. This is my excuse to talk about the novel. So it's a very, very short chapter. The managers essentially walk into an empty house and look at box 5 for a while and get all scared, and they all see different shadows and things that they think are the Phantom. Do you think the Phantom is really there?
Probably. I mean, he might just be there laughing at them, like messing around. Sounds like this is one of the parts of LaRue where LaRue very much like changes genre every chapter because I fully believe LaRue may have had some.
Here we go. Here we are on Google Maps, and
yes,
right here,
that's
this is
box 5, my
five.
friends, not the ones beside it.
No, which is strange because this doesn't seem like that much of a
it's
barrier. Because if you're coming out of this column, aren't everybody going to see you?
Yeah,
I don't get it.
I don't know, but yeah, he's coming out of that. I'm pointing to the screen like you can see
Well,
my
yeah,
finger.
you can see mine though, right? Like right
Yeah,
here.
that's
This is the
supposed to be
column
like
he supposedly
it's.
comes out of. Seems like
But
it's very visible.
I think it's because like the box is such a limited view that people are. It's the most hidden up against the wall there, and
Hmm.
I don't think LaRue would have because these are the other two, like 3 and 1. There are very fancy boxes,
Hmm.
and they have much better views.
Right.
But Eric's there for the music, not
Of
the theme.
course. Let's just take a
Yeah,
look around this beautiful room. Wow, I love Google Maps. It's great.
it's so cool.
There's a reference to probably every single thing on these walls here in this chapter.
Yeah.
Um, have you ever thought of this? Since I know you deep dive on your Supernatural and Marvel and wrote books about it and stuff. How come, and maybe this could be, I'm proposing this for you or for anyone else. Why is there not a companion to Phantom of the Opera so that we can see all of the locations and references, like kind of like you deep dive on your TikTok, but in book form?
Oh, like like a book.
Yeah, like chapter 7, visit to box 5. Here are the references. Here's the
That'd be
pictures of all the things they're looking at. Here's the area that they're in the opera house.
that'd be so cool. I mean, it'd be a big
Here's
book
what this
print.
character is based on in real life.
That'd be
All
a
those
really
kind
fun
of things.
to do like a fully annotated version of it. It'd be really fun to do just like an ebook where people could click on a link and like here's what
Right.
Christina
Even
Nielsen
that. Yeah, because that's
look
kind of
like
like how I want to imagine reading the
her.
novel is like as if it's really happening. There are real locations. You can
You
look
can go to
look here I am right here in the grand staircase, of
yeah,
course.
you can go to Paros. You can go to all the.
Yeah.
You can go to the post. This my friend
I
mailed
saw
me
that. I'm so
this
jealous.
from like the post office where, and I love it how extra Eric is. He's like, no, I can't. I'm gonna just put it at the post office. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
something I change. He just leaves it in their office in my books.
Right. Well, the closest I've ever found, and this is a new acquisition. I'm not sure if I've shown this on the show. Um, this also came from France, I believe, although not from the opera house. Is this book right here? Have you seen this?
I think so.
Gerard Fontaine has written several books about the Palais Garnier, and I guess this one is most dedicated to its relation to Phantom of the Opera instead of just general architecture textbooks,
Yeah,
basically.
it's for the
But it's still not exactly, and it's in French, so I can't really
yeah.
read it. But I still feel like it's a little bit incomplete in comparison to like references, and I wanted there to be more pictures of the lower parts of the building.
Yeah, it's
But
hard to find pictures of that.
let me find the box 5 page here. But if you can find this, it's a little pricey and you'll have to get it imported, but it's a pretty good companion to your Phantom of the Opera collections out there.
I'm gonna find my book, the other book I keep like near where I this
Yes.
I have this giant thing.
Okay, what's that one?
It's just like a coffee table book about the Paris Opera, and it's
Oh, who's it
got
by?
like um
Gerard Fontaine?
no, it's sort of like a compilation, but it's by Jacques Moati and Martine Kahane.
Hmm. And it's
But
called
it's got
the Opera Paris?
Paris Opera,
Paris
and it's just
Opera?
got like beautiful, huge photos
Yeah. Yeah,
and
they're similar in here.
a lot of history and cool stuff.
My favorite character in the novel is the opera house. That's what I
Yeah,
always say.
exactly.
Like I'm not for any of the other characters. They're all flawed, but the opera house is a real place and it's a living, like these are cool. Like here's of course the lake and stuff like that, which you could also see on Google Maps, which is fun.
That was like an important thing to me in writing was just
Here's
like making
here's
her
like
a character.
they don't get too far into the cellars. There's like some pictures like this, which are kind of cool, but it's not quite. It's like I want to see what the, even if it looks terrible, like that's what I want to see. I know there's a box 5 page on here somewhere. Well, while I'm flipping through this, do you have a favorite like fun fact, from all your research into the novel?
Oh my gosh, there's so many. My favorite thing is like I was recently researching like Eric Satie, who was one of the inspirations for Eric, the character.
Okay, yeah, tell me about
And he was
this
like
person.
he's like an impressionist composer, very much kind of like a talented and gifted child who didn't want to do too much with it. Um, and he was like recruited. He either was recruited or joined the army, like on a lark. And then he decided he really did not want to be in the army, and so he ran outside naked,
Hmm.
and in a rainstorm, and like gave himself pneumonia to get out of being in the army.
That's a chapter in one of your books, right?
Yeah, he's
Yeah.
just like, nope, I don't like this anymore. And so he got out of the army that way. He was very interesting guy. He was very much sort of like the Moulin Rouge, Montmartre, um, Belle Epoque era.
Becky says, I always thought that Eric Satie, but I thought I made it up in my head.
Oh no, yeah, he was definitely an influence on LaRue. He was a very mystical guy. He was sort of ahead of his time musically, and like I don't know if LaRue ever met him, but they ran in the same circles around the same time, so they
Right.
might have met. But yeah, he's a character. I mean,
That's
Gaston Leroux was a character. My favorite
oh
thing is,
yeah.
he shot off a gun every time
Right.
he finished a book, and I'm not going to do that.
Yeah, I was wondering, but
It wouldn't be out of place in my neighborhood though, because I live
hmm.
very close to a gun range, unfortunately.
You could
So
go to
no
the
one.
gun range every time you finish a
Yeah,
book.
I could. It's like right down the street.
Yeah. Okay, I found it just so I can show everybody. This is their box 5, very
Oh, good.
specifically pointed out as this one next to the bigger one. And then on this page, I guess it's more of a drawing of it. But we all know where box 5 is now. Have you ever been to the Opera House yourself?
Yeah, I went when I was like 13, and
Oh
then I went
man.
again in like 2000. Right for we went to Europe for my honeymoon in 2011,
Oh,
and we got to go there, and that was between the time I went as a teenager and then for my honeymoon, they'd put up the sign on box 5 saying
right.
"Le Loge de
Yeah.
la Fontaine de l'Opera," because they like when I first came, like Paris Opera has been very grudging about acknowledging that Phantom is
I think they're finally
a
embracing
thing.
it.
They're like, okay, we can make money off of this.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. They don't really do I don't know. Do they do as many performances there anymore? I don't think so. 'Cause they
It's
have a better,
mainly
more modern opera house there now.
They mainly do the ballet there,
Mm.
which is more prestigious in France, really, than
Yeah,
opera.
because the acoustic's not very good there,
Not great.
apparently.
But yeah, but they do operas there, and but there's also I think the Opera Bastille is a hideous building, and
Yeah, it's terrible. I mean, I've only seen pictures and videos, but it's like not interesting at all in the way that Palais Garnier is like interesting in every inch of
yeah.
it,
I
except for
studied
the
abroad
acoustics, I guess.
in Vienna, and my other favorite opera house is the Wiener Staatsoper, and it's like this. It's very kind of the same vibe as the Paris Opera, same era,
Hmm.
and they do new operas there there's opera playing there every night, so it's
Right.
great.
That's cool. This is my favorite fun fact. And I know you did a video, or
Oh,
it was part of one of your videos maybe. So it was topical to bring up. But this, I love
oh yeah,
that
I got
this actually exists.
it's so
And there's a
cool.
picture of them doing it. If you're doing a
Mhm,
movie, man, like here's your references right here. These are the real people who did the real
mhm.
thing that's in the book, you know? That's so
Yeah,
cool. Can you
it's
explain
very
to everybody what this
so
is?
like Gaston Leroux says at the end when when they're burying the gramophone recordings of the artist's voice, and it's sort of this one-off. Yeah, but they did actually bury like as like sort of a time capsule these gramophone recordings of some of the great opera singers of the times, and then you can buy a copy of it
Yeah,
now.
and they said they would be excavated in 100 years. And guess what? 100 years later was 2000 whatever, and they actually
Yeah,
did it. And
it's
you
so
can
cool.
buy it on CD. It's phenomenal. You can
Oh,
hear the real Firmin Germier speak. I'm guessing that's the inspiration for Firmin.
probably, yeah.
A real guy. You can hear him talking on this. It's crazy.
But yeah, those are so cool. I'm trying to think my other favorite fun fact is that Raoul is not actually like real nobility.
Right.
And
So what exactly was the history of that? Like
well,
his family was nobility,
he
but
was
then they
nobility, but like official titles of nobility were abolished in France. Like they had a whole revolution during the construction of the opera during the Franco-Prussian War, and
right.
you're like, yeah, no more nobility, and they still you could call people counts and viscounts, but like it had no significance anymore, and so.
But they were still rich, right?
Yeah, they're still rich.
Yeah.
Yeah.
When's the first time you read the novel?
Oh, like when I was 12 or something, like right after I first like saw the show. And I remember, I don't know, it's somewhere up on my bookshelf. Like before that, let's see if I can find it.
Let's show and tell. We love show and tell.
Do you have this one?
Yes.
It's like the
I do.
Stepping Stone book classic. I remember reading this when I was like 9 or 10. And it's this great little like tale.
I had someone do a dramatic reading of the last page on my proto Found a Phantom show, Phantom Phenomenon.
And I think that like the funny thing to me about this one is like it reminds me a lot of Susan K. because it's like no, it just is because it's first person. It's Eric's first person, and so much I'm like, did Susan K. read this and then just think it was canon? Because I swear
which came out first?
I think this came out in 1989. Is what it says.
When did Susan K. come out?
It's probably around. I don't know.
It just seems like it was there as long as I've known about Phantom. Let's see, 1990, Susan K.
So this was 1989. I don't know if Susan was looking at this, but
Phantom was very much in the air in that time.
It was very much,
you know, especially in the United States. It just had opened on Broadway in '88, I believe. Right.
80.
Well, in 86 in London and 88 on Broadway, I believe.
Yeah, because we just had the 35th, and I just had to do math, which there's a reason I'm an artist. Not
I was at the 35th performance.
Oh, I was there too.
Oh, really? In New York?
Yeah.
Oh shit, we were in the same room together.
Oh, yeah, it was a good show.
Yeah, I was in the last section of the last row, and all the way on the top. But it was cool.
Yeah, I was somewhere up in the balconies, and it was wonderful. It was great to be there.
Yeah, and I guess it's a good time to show. I don't know if I've showed these on the show, but I got these fabrics.
Oh, nice.
From our previous guests.
From
Rory. The fabrics used to make Christine's dressing gown and the Phantom suit. I got my little souvenirs.
I have some of those that I got from like the Tristan Moldovan was selling some as well, and so I've got those up there. And yeah, it was
a free for all in that fabric room, I think.
Yeah,
like grab what you can and fucking sell it. I support it. How do you feel about this show closing? Is this a controversial subject?
No, it's just because I think it's sad because it really kind of seems like it came down to money.
Yeah.
But I'm sure it will be back.
$1 million a month or something to keep that show open? Like, that's a lot.
Yeah, and the theater, from what I've heard, definitely needed some renovations.
Yeah, I think even the cast members had complained about that for years.
Yeah.
Like, ugh.
So, like if you listen to like the Pod of No Return,
I have. I was wondering if they stole your Muppet thing or.
Oh, I haven't heard that one.
They did a Muppet casting on there.
Oh, good. I just think that some of the Muppet casting is pretty obvious. It's like Carlotta
is Miss Piggy. I didn't grab it, but there is actual Muppet Phantom of the Opera.
There is, yeah.
It's already been done like for years.
Yeah. But like they didn't put in like safety restraints in the Angel until like after the pandemic. It's like that's terrifying.
Yeah.
I've like so many I've heard various stories about different phantoms, hair catching on fire in the final lair because they're like, yeah, let's use real flames. What could possibly go wrong?
Is that why I thought that they cut the flame? Is that?
Well, yeah, because maybe somebody caught on fire too many times. Like,
because I saw it. The last time I saw it front row. It was like a month before it closed or something like that. I think March. I was like, I think that was one of the things I noticed. I was like, what happened to the fire? Like, what? That doesn't make any sense.
When I was a wee teen, I went to see This Is Thomas James O'Leary.
Nice.
And like the first time I saw it, second time I saw it on Broadway, and he talked about how he was doing the final lair and his wig caught on fire, and somebody was just like frantically gesturing at him, and he got it out. But then somebody after the show was like, "Wow, that was such a great special effect." She's like,
Why do you think the Phantom looks like this now?
Yeah. But then like, Davis Gaines, I think like broke his ankle as Raoul jumping through the floor. Like
That does seem
so many things have
dangerous.
happened.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So, are you saying that yes, it needed to happen? Like,
I
get
don't
over
think
it.
it needed to. They probably could have done it in a way, and I feel like it's really sad how the cast found out, like through a leaked story. Like that really sucks for everyone.
Dude, I did a found a Phantom episode that night, a solo book club episode.
Hmm.
Didn't hear the news until after I was off air. I was like, I totally missed the mark on that one. Like
Yeah, I was
huge
like,
Phantom news, and I totally didn't even cover it.
I was in line at like the Haunted Mansion in Disneyland. So I'm like, well, at least I'm in Disneyland, and this makes me feel better. But yeah, I mean, I think it's really sad. I'm glad London is still going, and we have so many
Yeah, but it's not the
productions.
original production.
Yeah,
That's like the New York was the last of its kind, really.
yeah.
I guess.
I hope when they bring it back, because I know it will
Of
come
course.
back,
Yeah,
that
in some
they
way.
don't. Hopefully, they don't use the tour staging because I wasn't crazy about it. And so much of what made the Broadway production and Maria Bjornsson's design was it was the use of like darkness and negative space.
Oh yeah. It's
Like you actually,
amazing up close to see how little there actually is on stage.
yeah,
I mean,
like
it
the
seems
manager,
like it's so huge, but it's really just
yeah,
layers of curtains and
yeah,
lights.
and like the understanding that you don't have to have everything be filled up because your imagination fills it,
Right.
and that's sort of how the plot of Phantom
Right, that's kind of the
musical
theme,
works. Because
yeah.
like some of them, like if you think too much about the plot, you're like, wait, what happened? How much
Yeah.
time has passed?
What's up with
No,
that
it's
sex doll? What?
no thoughts, just vibes. It's
Yeah,
fine.
yeah. Yeah, there's some choices. I don't know. I feel like it's sad, but 35 years is a long fucking time.
Yeah,
Like,
they got a good run.
it had a really good run.
Um,
It'll definitely come back, you know.
it'll it'll come back, and this is the first time in what like 41 years or
And he
something, or
hasn't had
something is it
anything
that
on
there hasn't
Broadway.
been
Yeah,
an
because
Edward
Bad
Albert.
Cinderella closed after like a couple weeks. Oof.
Yeah, didn't see that one.
He missed
But
the
Evita's
opening and
coming
then it
back.
closed
They're bringing back Evita and
on
Joseph. So
Broadway.
yeah, have you heard about the
Perfect.
new production of Cats they're doing?
No, tell me about the new production of
Um,
Cats.
it is going to be based. They're like redoing it as a drag ballroom Cats.
Okay.
And so it's going to be all like BIPOC and gender nonconforming performers, and like the casting was like Grisabella is like a trans woman. It's just it sounds amazing, and it actually
It's
like
gonna be
wow
on
this
Broadway?
it's gonna be in New York, I think. It's like a workshop,
Hmm.
and I'm like, wow, that actually makes the plot of Cats make sense.
Hmm.
You found a way to make Cats make sense. And I love Cats. Like
I
it
was
was the
gonna
first
ask, like, people have opinions on Cats.
it was the first show I ever saw when I was like 6 years old. We saw it in London. It was 90 degrees in London,
Hmm.
in the late 80s. There was no air conditioning anyway. And I had like read Old Possum's Book of Practical Cats. My mom had read it to me before we started the show, and I was obsessed with McCavity, who was pretty much like the Phantom of Cats. Um, and I loved it. I love Cats, and like you just Cats is one of the things. Just don't think too hard about it. Just ignore it.
Yeah.
Enjoy
I
it.
mean, it's a collection of short poems, basically, like, put to
Yeah,
music, and it's fun.
and
I thought it was fun. I
it's
saw it
fun.
on Broadway when I was a kid.
Yeah,
I just
it's a great
my
show.
my cat story is, the lights go out, and the first thing that happens is the cats, like, run across the
Hmm.
audience. Like, the lights go out, the first thing I see is a light right in front of my face as he was passing
Hmm.
by me, and it was very shocking.
Yeah, last summer I got to take my daughter to see it, and she was about the same age as when I first saw it, and it was just so cool to see her experience it. And she'd heard McCavity too. She said,
This was in where?
It was on the tour came through Portland last year, and
Do
so
they
it was
still
really
have,
fun.
I mean, because I don't know if they do this in every theater, but on Broadway, I remember anywhere you look, like along the walls, there's like cats doing stuff like all over the theater and
They can't do that in like the tour productions
yeah.
just because of, but they do what they can. There's limitations, but yeah, I remember the theater in Broadway or the London theater. It was just so cool what they did to it, and yeah, I love Cats.
It's
Theater's
fun.
great.
What did you think of the Cats movie?
It was.
Was it better than the 2004 Phantom of the Opera
I would watch
movie?
it. I would rather watch the Cats movie than because they.
For
I mean,
its
like at
camp
least most
value,
of the
I
people.
hope, or
It's campy. It's weird. It's not trying to be anything.
it's so weird.
It's so weird. It's you know. I think some people who take an edible before watching Cats probably have a
Right.
really great
Yeah,
time.
that's what I mean. Like, you can't take it too
Yeah.
seriously. Like, what are you doing?
Um. But I thought it was fun. I made my whole family go see it with me for my birthday,
I
and they'll
didn't see it
never
in the
forgive
theater.
me.
I did watch it on streaming, I think. I'm not that
Um,
into. Funny enough, like my love of Phantom doesn't really correlate with a love of Broadway as much. Like I appreciate it and I
yeah.
would love to go to see more Broadway shows, but I don't know as much about Broadway shows in general.
I feel like the only Andrew Lloyd Webber movie that's really rewatchable and good is Evita. I thought that was pretty
With
great
Madonna,
with Madonna and
I
Antonio
haven't seen it
Banderas.
actually.
It's really
Um,
great. It's quite good.
Here's the one I also have no excuse that I've never seen, and it's on my list of things to do. But I heard the Jesus Christ Superstar movie is pretty great. From the
It's very campy. It's very
Yeah,
70s, but
yeah.
it's pretty fun.
Did you
Yeah,
ever
I
see
love.
the? There was a parody on, I think, Mr. Show or one of those kind of shows of Jesus Christ Superstar, and Jesus was Jack Black, like when he was younger.
Oh no,
It's so funny. You
Jack
gotta
Black.
look it up.
Somebody needs to put him in a full musical because he's brilliant. I love Jack Black.
I know, yeah. Um, I don't know. I'm associating him with Goosebumps because I know he was in the Goosebumps movie, and then Goosebumps has a Phantom of the
Oh
theater
yeah,
auditorium. I don't know if
my
there's a role for him in there, but
you know, my daughter is obsessed with Goosebumps. It's one of her few. It's one of her. She had
the
for
books or the
Christmas
movie or
the
both.
the show from the 90s that's on
Oh wow.
Netflix.
Is it on
Um,
Netflix?
yeah, it's on
There is
Netflix.
a Phantom of the Auditorium episode, right?
Yeah, she's watched that
Mhm.
one. Um, but she likes all the ones with Slappy, the evil,
Oh, like the
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 dummy,
doll. Yeah, the dummy.
yeah,
Well, have you
terrifying.
heard the actual musical, Goosebumps the
I have
musical?
not heard Goosebumps the
Because
musical,
it's Goosebumps the musical,
but
Phantom
it's
of the
him.
Auditorium.
Yeah.
Like that's what it is. It's for kids, it's okay.
Yeah.
Like I'd like to see it. I'd like to talk to somebody who had a part in that at
They're
least.
very active on like social media,
I
so
know, but they like my stuff, but then they don't respond to my messages.
oh,
So
okay. Well,
yeah, I've tried. I've tried. If you're listening, if you were involved with Goosebumps the musical,
mhm.
come on my show. Let's talk about it.
It's so hard for like other musicals to compete with the Andrew Lloyd Webber because it's hard.
Well, yeah, of course. I mean,
Mhm.
we don't have to talk about all the Phantom musicals. We know they're out there. Let's see. What else did I want
We
to
can
ask
talk
you
about
about?
the music. I've been doing this.
Yes, your Illumination series.
Yeah, I've been doing because like I'm a music major, and so
Right.
I've been having a lot of fun talking about like the actual music and getting into the core, like what chords and keys and everything, and
I
that's been really
didn't know.
fun.
Yeah, like that was a fact that you said I didn't know about, that the lyrics to Music of the Night are different on the highlight CD than the normal
Yeah,
one. Did they? But it's still Michael Crawford.
yeah,
I
it's
figured
Michael
they just took it
Crawford.
straight from there.
No,
They
so like
re-recorded it again.
yeah, I mean I had the two CD set and the
Yeah.
single disc, and Music of the Night is very different lyrics
Hmm.
on the highlights, which is just like they're
But all
on
the
the
other recordings are exactly the same as the other
yeah,
CD, right?
and on
That's
like
so
and they sing
strange.
it the way it is on the two CD set. But yeah, it's so strange that it's different lyrics, and um like all the songs have been changed since the original recording.
Yeah,
They've been
I
changed, then changed back. It's very confusing.
I've been meaning to like actually listen to or watch like the original production to see how much has changed. Like,
Mhm.
what are some of the highlights of things that you say have changed?
Like with one of the biggest thing that gets changed and changed back is the wandering child, as whether it's a duet or a trio.
Hmm.
Because sometimes, like for a long time on Broadway and on the tour, it wasn't a trio when Christine the Phantom start singing to each other and Raoul's there. He's not there sometimes.
Hmm.
And now on Broadway, now it's a trio and all three of them are singing at the same time, which I mean, I think it's clear I'm not a very Team Raoul sort of girl, but
Mm-hmm.
I don't like that just musically because it's hard to like understand what's going
That's
on.
why I don't like prima donna. It's just like it's a good idea. Maybe it works better on a recording, a professional recording, but when you're in the theater, you're just like, I can't hear what anybody's saying. There's
Like,
5 people singing at me at once.
like as an opera person, it reminds me of like sometimes in an opera because you have the super titles in the opera,
I
and then the
don't, but
song
tell me, yes.
like an opera, it's the opera version of subtitles is the super titles. They're projected above the screen, above the stage, or sometimes they're
Oh,
on the back of a seat in front of you.
I didn't know that.
And um, sometimes, there'll be like one line and then they'll just give up when when 8 people are singing. They're like, yeah, it's just vibes. Just go with it.
Yeah.
The end of
I mean, it's
Marriage Heroes
impressive.
like
Nothing against the actors singing those, prima donna or whatever, but
that.
it's confusing and there's not much action happening, so you're just kind of like staring like,
Well,
what
yeah,
is
because
happening?
it's the moment where Andrew Lloyd Webber's like, yeah, I'm gonna write, a Italian opera, just
Right?
and high and and throw it into because there's so much operatic parody and pastiche in
Mm-hmm.
Phantom. So
Right.
he's just like, I'm just gonna write this operatic song and
Yeah, is there any yeah, what's like a fun fact you found out about, the I guess the pastiche operas or, how your knowledge of opera and I guess we'll talk about
yeah.
Andrew Lloyd Webber's Phantom of the Opera first.
Well, like my favorite, like the opera I reference a lot in my books is The Marriage of Figaro, and it's
Mm,
referenced in Lloyd Webber too because Christine is called her character Serafimo and is a
mm,
page boy. In The Marriage of Figaro, there's a character called Carabino, so
mm,
you go from Seraphim to Cherubim, so it's an adjacent angel, and who is a pants roll, a mezzo pants roll, and he's like this very horny young man who sings like at least 2 arias about how he's just hopelessly horny. And so there were like silent roles, the kind that Christine plays in Il Muto were really like a thing, but it works
I
for this
love the
show.
Muto scene. It's one of my
Yeah,
favorites.
it's so great. But like, and then the contest, there's a Contessa character in The Marriage of Figaro too. But Il Muto is like a cross between Marriage of Figaro, but also Die Rosenkavalier, which is a Strauss opera that is much more modern and much more tragic. It's about a countess having a affair with a young man played by a mezzo soprano woman, and so they kind of mush those two together, but it's not very comedic.
Right. What about is there any see this is another blind spot for me. The operas that are actually referenced in the novel, what is your history with those or is there anything pop
Well,
out to
it's
you?
really interesting because like some of them, like Faust,
Mm-hmm.
still pretty popular and still perform, but like
Right.
others, like there's the Roi de Lahore. No one performs that anymore. No one
Right.
performs La Juvie or La Profeta, which is the one where Cesar the horse is, you know,
Mm-hmm.
featured. Like most of these Meyerbeer operas, um, he's just not a composer who's like Meyerbeer was sort of like the Jerry Bruckheimer of 19th century opera. He was very loud and very big and had a lot of production, things like horses. And he just fell out of style because it was more about spectacle than it was about the like really good music. And so that's what Lloyd Webber is referencing in Hannibal with like the elephant.
Mm-hmm.
There's also like reference to Aida, and there's elephants in Aida sometimes. They did that here in the Portland Opera. They borrowed an elephant from the zoo and
Wow.
brought it on stage. And I just think about those poor performers like stuck backstage, like if the elephant pooped or something.
Those poor elephants.
And the elephant like got a standing ovation. It like
It
completely,
better.
yeah. But it was like, it was a good production. I remember seeing that, and the poor tenor was just not having a great
There's
night. He was
nobody in the back of the elephant drinking on this one? No.
no, but yeah. So Hannibal's like definitely a like all the operas in Phantom are referencing a lot of different things, and
Is
like
there
down.
is there like a favorite opera from the original novel that you would recommend or
I
maybe
mean,
something that people haven't heard of as much?
Faust is wonderful. I
Yeah.
think one of the interesting ones is references when the Phantom and Christine are in his house, and they're singing from Otello, and it's not Verdi's opera that was written after Phantom is set, and so it's the Rossini Otello that is much more bel canto. It's really very pretty, and it's kind of a lesser known Rossini opera because mostly his comic operas are well known. But so that's a fun one that you don't really hear mentioned very often. What other ones are like?
Are there modern recordings of them though that like?
Yeah, they're out there.
Yeah.
And one of the things I'll this is like a spoiler for.
Uh-oh.
I'll eventually get to it in this little illumination series I'm doing, but in Eric's room, he has the Dies Irae around his coffin bed.
What is that?
The Dies Irae is like a Latin chant from dating back to like the 10th or 11th century. That is part of like the Requiem Mass. It's Dies Irae, Dies Illa, and you hear it referenced all around music. It shows up in like Frozen too. There's a great, if you're on YouTube, you ever watch Howard Ho?
No.
He's a great YouTuber who does some really cool music analysis, and he talks about some musical Easter eggs in like Frozen. And the Dies Irae is just like this melody that gets referenced all over. And they do reference it a little bit in the Don Juan scenes. You can kind of find the Dies Irae is hidden in there. And so you hear of a little bit of that.
Like Don Juan Triumphant from Andrew Lloyd Webber?
From Andrew Lloyd Webber, yeah. So, yeah, there's Dies Irae kind of hidden in there, and that's kind of a very, very, very obscure music Easter egg that references back to the original.
From your expert knowledge, what do you think Eric from the book's music sounded like? His original material.
So I like to I think about this a lot, actually, because LaRue was writing about 30 years after it's set, so I think he was probably thinking of music from the late 19th, early 20th century. And so I think of composers like Dvorak, who became more popular in the late 19th century, or Richard Strauss, who wrote De Rosenkavalier. He was much more atonal than like Gounod. And atonal just means like the music has like a lot more crunchy harmonies. And so Dvorak sort of my go-to, but also like Camille Saint-Saëns, who I talk about in my book. Have you seen Babe? This will make sense.
The movie about the pig?
Yes.
No.
So
I know what it is.
So this is
maybe when I was a kid.
There's a song that he sings to Babe where he's like dee 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 dee.
I'm gonna believe you on this one.
Okay.
Yeah. I'm gonna trust
you. He sings
you.
a song to the pig, and it goes into this beautiful thing. That is a melody from Camille Saint-Saëns, like I think it's a Ninth Symphony, but it's called like the Organ Symphony. And that melody is played on the organ in this beautiful Camille Saint-Saëns symphony. And it always makes me think about Eric. And I like that's what he would have written because it's got this big organ solo.
You think he's yeah, I bet you there was organ solos all over Don Juan Triumphant, right?
Yeah. But so like but it's one of the few like symphonies where you have like a big part for an organ. So that always makes me think of it. But yeah, Dvorak, he has a beautiful opera called Rusalka, and there's a song called Song to the Moon. And Rusalka, I think, came out in like 1892. And it just like, if Eric were to write an aria for Christine, I think Song to the Moon would be, this is how I would imagine it. It's in Czech, so if you want to hear a beautiful aria in Czech. And Dvorak, he wrote the New World Symphony, which, if you've heard any movie music ever, it's so much of the way movie music sounds nowadays. It's like can trace back to Dvorak and the New World Symphony. I joke that every theme John Williams ever wrote is hidden in there somewhere. So those are my like very music nerdy.
What about the Resurrection of Lazarus? The mysterious piece of music nobody knows exactly what it's
no one
supposed
knows.
to be.
Like I've been searching for this.
So many people have written things called that since the book
Yeah.
came out, I'm sure. So it's
Yeah,
hard
there's
to
like if you search for it, you'll find people who have composed
right.
versions of it. And there's like I made one of my early TikToks I made about this, like there's doesn't seem to be an actual
Right.
music piece like that matches what we hear, because there's like choral pieces that were really obscure and German, which I don't know why Gaston Leroux would have known about them, and they don't really work for like a solo violin piece. um so yeah, there's like a Rising of Lazarus choral piece, but it doesn't seem to work. I like the way they do it. I love the scene in the Robert Englund version where they
Oh
have,
yeah, the music in that movie is
yeah,
some of my. I think that is probably my favorite Phantom music of all time. Maybe.
yeah, that's a fun, and I
Dun,
love like also
dun, dun, dun.
Death by Violin is fun. But so in my
Misha
book,
Siegel, wrote that stuff. It's
yeah,
great.
but like when I was writing my books, like I'm like, well, this is sort of an open thing. I can create what the resurrection of Lazarus means in my
Mm.
story, and so it became this Romani piece of music that's somehow Christine's father knows, and that Eric knows also, and how he knows and why Christine's father knows that is explained in book 2.
Ooh, teaser for book
So
2.
yeah, teaser.
Um,
But yeah, I just sort of like, okay, I'll make this my own thing. I'll because yeah, it's not a famous piece of music.
yeah, it's a mystery, and I guess it's open to interpretation.
There, to just one more music nerdy thing.
Please.
It's not what I think Eric's music would sound like, but a song I think Eric would be really good at singing is called Die Erlkönig by Schubert. And it's this song where the singer has to do 3 or 4 different voices.
Hmm.
And it's about this like little boy who is riding through the night with his father, and the elf king is like singing to him and trying to like tempt him, and then by the end of the song the little boy's dead. It's very sad, but
And
it's
he can make the voices come from different places
yeah.
since he's a ventriloquist. So
Go listen, if everyone's listening, go listen to Daryl Koenig and imagine Eric singing it, because it's very, very creepy and cool. It's a great piece of music.
So here's a general question. What do you think is the most controversial topic that you've touched on in the Phantom universe?
I mean, I think people got really mad when I said Emmy Rossum was a bad singer.
I have more of a complaint about her age in the movie.
Yeah, like that's
I
the thing
love
that,
Emmy Rossum in Shameless. Like she's a
yeah,
wonderful actress, but like a little too young for the role.
I don't like that people have taken her age in the movie and like then misinterpreted the whole character. Like, oh,
You can't
the
have
Phantom is a
chemistry with a
groomer.
teenager on screen
Yeah,
like
like
that. It's weird.
just like the whole thing where also everyone's like living in the opera in the movie is just very strange.
Well,
And she's
I
been there.
guess yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that is a little weird. Although in the book it does say that like some people live in the opera.
Yeah, like that's
And I'm
cool.
wondering about that. Like, was that a true fact? And how many people lived in the opera? Like old couples and stuff.
Just like the
They
squatters.
just pay rent there, or
Who
were they
knows?
more like your Christine who found their own
Yeah.
space? You know?
Just like, hit around because it's big. It's a big building.
Right. Yeah.
What other controversial opinion? Like my other controversial opinion is I don't like Christine's masquerade costume in the show. I think it's far too. Even though my hair is this color, I don't like that her costume is like neon pink. It just sort of that bugs me a little bit. But I don't know. What are the other controversial opinions? I try not to be too like. I just want
No, but
everyone.
it's just interesting what people pick up on as like controversial. I guess I don't know if that's like an open-ended word, but you know what I mean. Like
Yeah, it's and it depends on like how big a reach something gets, because that video I made that you played about the CC dress and Emmy Rossum, like it got a lot of views, and so a lot of people were like about 500 people came out of the woodwork told me, well, Emmy Rossum, she was an opera singer and she was in the children's chorus.
Yeah, I saw that video too.
That's not the same.
No.
And like
she's not a bad. I mean,
yeah,
it's not maybe appropriate for the role. I wouldn't say she's a terrible singer.
She's not a bad singer, but she's not an operatic singer.
The only one who could actually sing in that movie was
Patrick Wilson was.
Oh, Patrick Wilson. No, but she doesn't even sing in the movie.
Oh yeah, Carlotta had a voice double, and
yeah. What's her name?
Minnie Driver.
Minnie Driver, who was also in another Phantom movie. That's it's funny, but yeah, she's the only one who can probably sing, but they didn't even use her real voice, so whatever.
Yeah, it's and I just love that people. I love that people love that movie. I love that it brought so many people who because Broadway is not as accessible as it should be.
No.
It is so expensive.
Not
I
only
wish.
the ticket, but just like getting to New York,
Yeah.
everything around it. If you have to park and eat
And like that's why I love the 25th anniversary, even though it's again like I don't think Sierra Boggess, her vowels are like she makes some weird.
That's controversial. You have a problem with
The way she
Sierra?
says angel is really strange. But I love her performance.
Yeah.
And but I just love that it's like a way of seeing the show for people who can't see it as close as
there's a couple things in it that I'm like, no, there's none. This isn't there. But at the same time, it's also bigger in some ways. So
yeah,
we still haven't gotten that essential like Phantom on stage professional version.
like a pro shot. Like
I know there were cameras in the last few shows. What's going on with that? We saw the chandelier go up, and that's the only part of it we saw.
But yeah.
Could there be something in the works? I don't know.
I hope so. I mean, like, there's so many.
You want to make money? We'll all buy that.
I know, like, the Hamilton pro shot that's on it was so great. And,
I haven't seen it yet, but I should.
Yeah, but I wish
once
a
running,
week that
so like
Broadway
it's not
shows.
gonna ruin it.
Yeah, I wish once a week Broadway shows would just like live stream it, and you could pay $5.
Yeah.
That wouldn't diminish their returns.
No, they would probably make a lot of money actually because you could sell it to more people.
Yeah, like just put a camera in one of the seats. I will watch Hadestown like that 17 times. I don't care.
Yeah, there are other musicals that like again, I don't know if I'll be able to relate to you here, but like that you love that are out there right now.
I'm obsessed with Hadestown. I just when I was on this recent vacation, I had a Hadestown hoodie, and my daughter like asked about it, and she likes mythology, so I was telling her like the story, and I played her some of the music, and she loved it. And so we listened to all of Hadestown. It's sort of like the way like my mom played me Phantom when I was about her age. And now hopefully I'm going to take her to see Hadestown when it comes through Seattle on the tour. So I love Hadestown. I mean, I love Wicked, which is just like Phantom in green.
I saw it once. I wasn't that impressed.
Great
show. The music didn't hit me.
I don't know why they're making it into 2 movies.
They're making it into 2 movies?
Yeah, they're splitting it into 2. I don't understand.
Also have never read the original Wicked novel. That's something I would be interested in doing.
The book and the movie the book and the show are very different.
I'm sure,
vibes.
yeah.
The book
I worked at Barnes & Noble's when that came out, so I remember it being like a phenomenon.
Yeah. It's a cool book, but it's very different than the
20-something years ago.
I love Little Shop of Horrors. I love Newsies. I love Les Mis, Jekyll and Hyde. If we're talking about Gothic.
I saw Jekyll and Hyde once on Broadway. I want to say I saw Sebastian Bach in the role, but I can't say that for certain. I know he did the role. I thought I saw him. I'd have to check on that.
I love Rent and the other, the Scarlet Pimpernel, same composers as Jekyll and Hyde. That's a really fun show. When I was in college, one of my favorite Phantoms is Brad Little, and he's just a wonderful singer. And he did the Scarlet Pimpernel, and it was like just a perfect timing down in San Jose. I got to go see him do it there, and he was wonderful. So I loved seeing Brad Little in that role. And
is Rent problematic these days?
I mean,
because has it aged well? I mean, I saw it when I was in high school and I loved Rent, but
I think that like our understanding of the characters of like the character of Angel is like a trans character has probably evolved. But it's also
they also throw dogs out the window. So are they really great people? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like that was funny, but now it's like, oh, that's actually pretty terrible.
Yeah. Being an older person is realizing like, no, Benny had a really good point. And why are none of these people calling back their mothers? Their mothers are leaving all these messages for them. Call your mom back, Roger. But I saw a great thing recently about how Rent is an unfinished show, and
Yeah,
Jonathan Larson very tragically
of course.
passed away. I
During the
love the
previews, right?
you
Or
know
right before the previews, something like that.
yeah, Rent is fanfic. It is a La Boheme
Right. Yeah.
fanfic, and they musically quote La Boheme in it, but it ends better. It's sort of like what I'm doing. Like, what if La Boheme, but no one died?
Hmm.
What if Phantom, but it was happier?
Right.
Ish.
Well, I guess I mean I can't relate to the time period of Rent, but I did live in New York City for 15 years, so I have like walked to the building that it's supposed to be set in and stuff like
Mm-hmm.
that. They do give the cross streets in the beginning of the play, and also like the Pyramid Club and stuff like that that they reference in the play. Like I've been there probably 100 something times. It was a little bit more personal than Paris for me because I lived in
Yeah,
New York, but
but
not
yeah,
when there was like squatters on blocks and all that stuff in the
hmm
90s.
yeah. I don't think the Rent movie was also like if we're talking about like movie
It's better than
adaptations,
the Phantom movie
it's better.
adaptation.
But it is so hard to adapt a movie well from Broadway
Yeah, yeah.
to. I don't think the Les Mis movie was great either, and the Rent one was, and like the Rent were like the producers. The producers is just very lifeless, and so
I
it's
never
so
saw that
hard to
one.
get that magic from the theater onto movies. It's very hard
I
to
think
transfer it.
the thing it's like it's a great thing and it's a terrible thing about the Ren movie is getting most of the original cast back. But
They're a
like
bit
they're
old.
like 40, dude.
Yeah.
Like they're supposed to be like young 20-something year olds struggling with Ren. Like
Hmm.
it's great because they have the classic voices that you recognize, but like, dude, they're way too old for the characters.
And yet more believable than the ages of the actors in the Grease movie.
Oh yeah, well that's yeah, I saw your comment about that
I
too.
don't
It's
think.
very true. I mean, they
Mhm.
look 40 to me. Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, it's very hard to make a great movie musical. And you look at all the classic movie musicals of like the 60s. Those were made almost they weren't adapting a iconic stage production. They made them their own thing. Like
Right.
Sound of Music works better as a movie than it does as a
Mm.
show, I think. And it's just hard. And getting great singers, there aren't a lot of Julie Andrewses in the world.
Yeah, the one character in Rent movie that was more believable because she wasn't the original cast
Yeah.
was Mimi. Um, Even though at the time, or
Mhm.
well, not at the exact time, but a couple years later, I would actually go do some work for Daphne Rubin Vega, and at the time, I don't think she'd even talk about it.
Yeah. But then like we have like, The Greatest Showman,
Hmm.
that was a pretty fun movie because they just made it its own thing. And I don't know if it would work as a stage show because they used the cinematic format so well in that movie. So
Right. Yeah, that was fun. The
not
kids love it.
speaking of historically inaccurate,
Oh
not
yeah,
so
let's hear it.
much.
Let's hear it.
I mean, P.T. Barnum was not as nice a person as he is portrayed to be in that movie.
I bet.
Um, though Jenny Lind, the character in that movie is one of these, famous Swedish sopranos that may have influenced the character of Christine, but she was
Christine
a bit
Nielsen.
what?
Christine Nielsen.
Well, so Jenny Lind was the character, this woman who P.T. Barnum brought over from Europe to sing
Hmm.
across America. And that's a real story that they dramatize in The Greatest Showman. But she was also Swedish,
Oh,
and she was
I didn't make that connection.
yeah. So they she may have influenced the character of Christine too, but she was a bit earlier in the 19th century, and
Hmm.
I think I reference her like once for one sentence in my book because people are like, "Oh, Christine's Swedish. She must be related to Jenny Lind, though she might have been Norwegian. We don't know."
Um, well, do you want to tease your book a little bit? I feel like we can wrap this up. But I want
Yeah,
you to like promote your shit. It's
yeah,
coming out in a couple days.
yes. I have book one is out now. The ebook is on sale because I want people to read that, and then you get the first one for cheap, and then come for the next one.
Hmm.
And so this one, it's like it starts when Christine arrives at the opera and is all about why Eric even helps her in the first
Oh, I
place.
do have one more question about
Oh
that
yeah,
before you go on. Tell me if I'm wrong in interpreting this, but it seems like your Christine, kind of makes the connection between the opera ghost and her angel of music pretty early on.
Yeah.
Is that true? And why?
Yeah. She sort of, because like my
Because
Christine,
then she's still surprised that he's the opera ghost. I kind of was
well,
confused.
she's been, you know, she comes to the Paris Opera having lost like all her faith because her father made her this promise that she was going to send an angel, and it hasn't happened.
Right.
And she doesn't believe in anything. And like Eric overhears this, he's like, "Oh, I'll make you believe in
Right.
something." And he kind of shows her himself as the ghost, and that restores her faith. And so she goes and kind of fulfills this promise to her father to sing on the stage. And that's when Eric kind of comes in and is like, "Hey there." And she does throughout the story, the ghost and the angel are the same
Right. Like
entity.
before the big reveal,
Yeah.
she kind of puts that together already.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. But she doesn't realize, oh, you're just a human person pretending
Right.
to be
I
both
guess
these things.
that's the band-aid that
That's the
really
big like
comes off.
you're,
Yeah.
and that kind of like, oh, my faith in this supernatural being and this heavenly creature has been abused, and it was all a lie. And maybe and it's all about her faith and that stuff. And then Raoul comes around and says like, no, angels can take all sorts of different forms. God works in mysterious ways. And she's like, huh. So that's one of the fun twists, is that Raoul is the one who kind of
Is there a rat catcher?
he is referenced. He doesn't show up in book 2, but he will be in book 3.
All right.
Like there's a great conversation in book 2 where like Eric and Christine are talking about all the legends about him, and she's like, "Oh, surely that one about your head being on fire is a lie." He's like, "Oh no, that's real. It's just not me.
Mm-hmm.
It's this guy who's surrounded by 1,000 rats. He might be coming around today." And she's very mad at him for
Wait, what about the shadow?
the shade.
The shade, yes. This is the
Yeah,
most mysterious part of the entire novel. What is the shade? I want a whole
I
side book about him or
there's going to
her
be like
or
I've
them.
always wanted to know that, and so there's an explanation coming. That's the big thing in book 3, is what the shade is and who he is and why he's doing what he is. But that's something that's for book 3 that I'm still working.
It's like, no, that's something much worse.
But
Like, what do
that'll
you
be a
mean it's
spoiler.
much worse?
But yeah, and then book 2 is sort of about them coming to like knowing each other as human beings, and like we've got the croaking is in here, the masquerade, the
So all the
encounter.
is the Phantom going to be meaner in this one? Because I was waiting for him to be the monster that we all know him to be.
Well, he's like, I mean, I definitely wanted, this is a romance novel about them,
Right.
and so he's a bit more likable. But there is a higher body count in
Okay.
this.
Yeah. You say like,
Joseph.
where's the horror elements? Is it
Yeah,
coming?
Joseph Bouquet. He's in the first scene. Joseph Bouquet is in it, and he's being detestable, and Carlotta's around there too, being
Yeah,
mean.
you're Joseph's the drunk Joseph. Why
Yeah,
is he the drunk Joseph?
because he's not a nice
So in the
guy.
novel, he's a very sober person, actually.
Yeah,
He's very mischaracterized in most versions.
yeah, but it's more it's more fun to murder him if he's not so nice.
Okay. So the Phantom has a moral scale of sorts.
Well, like the way that Joseph Bouquet dies, like spoiler, Joseph Bouquet dies,
You've never read
in
the
book
first
2.
chapter of the Phantom of the Opera.
Yeah, it's like a lot of things I do in the books. It takes what you think from Baru and does it, and is a very different interpretation. It's like, so he does die, but the circumstances of his death and the fallout from it are very different. And there's some, it's also a sexier book. Just you don't need to clutch your
Sexier than
pearls.
that line that I highlighted.
Maybe.
Yeah.
But I think that's a selling point. It might be a gayer book, and let's see what else is in there. There's also like, fun stuff like in the scene, where Raoul sees Eric and Christine at the Bois. Like, that scene always bugged me in LaRue, because it's like, how did somebody saw Christine at the exact right moment and then told Raoul about it right when he needed to hear it. And then he gets there at the exact right moment. And they're at the same place again. It's so much narrative convenience. And it's just like, it just happens because the plot needs it to happen. And so I kind of was struggling with that. I'm like, well, what if
That's funny.
what if it was convenient for a reason, and what if like somebody was setting up Raoul to be there, and so it's I play with that too, and why he's there. And Raoul, I think, is a character I changed least from LaRue, because he spends a lot of LaRue being like crying and then calling Christine names and then changing his mind.
Well, there you go.
So,
Go buy the book. Where's the best
go buy
place
the books.
for them to buy it? Like, is there a preferred place for you to
they're on at the Amazon. It is cheap, like the hardback, the paperbacks are $1 cheaper on Amazon, because I get 4 times as much money selling it on Amazon than I do anywhere else.
So Amazon.
Yeah. And if you want to buy a signed copy, I have a link to all my link trees.
Yes,
you can buy signed copies from Etsy.
I had to fix it mid-show. It said Inktree before, but I fixed it. And there's a link in the description and everything.
And yeah, it'll be out very soon. I hope people.
Oops, that's not the one I want to show.
Like it. Is the readers who have already read it really enjoyed it. There's one of them, I know at least 1 or 2 down in the chat who've read it.
Can you give me a thumbs up if it's good?
Anna, I'm watching you.
Yeah. There we go.
There it goes. Yeah.
Linktree.
And I have
by Jessica Mason.
Yeah, and there's also on my Linktree, there's a playlist of all the music that's used in my book. So if you want to hear,
is there a lot of overlap with the music from the LaRue novel?
Yeah, like if you want to hear what Faust sounds like, there's a lot of Faust in there. There's a lot of
here. Yes, the Jewel song, I'm sure, right?
There's also some Irish folk songs in there, just for reasons that'll.
There you go.
Yeah. So,
J. Lloyd Webber, any relation?
Yeah, it is actually like
really.
Yeah, so there's this song comes up, this Three Ravens. It's this old English folk song, and I found an arrangement of it played by Julian Lloyd Webber, who is Edward Webber's brother, who he wrote. He wrote these variations for a theme of Paganini for cello for his brother. So yeah,
amazing. Well, thank you so much for doing this.
So much for
I've satiated my Phantom conversation for this week. What's your favorite version besides your own?
Besides my own, I mean, the musical is really hard to beat. It's just the Broadway show is it's so magical, so beautiful. But I mean, the Wishbone also my favorite version of Raoul.
A lot of people like that.
Yeah, so I like Wishbone.
Okay, this is my last question. What is your opinion on I Lost My Heart to a Starship Trooper? And don't tell me you don't know what this is.
Oh, it's amazing. I know what it is. I haven't listened to it for a long time, but Sarah Brightman
and there's another
has
one.
had an incredible
career. Adventure of the Love Crusader.
I've not. Oh my gosh.
Yes.
She's just.
Oh, look at this picture.
Iconic. It's like they look like they stole the costumes from Starlight Express.
I want the campy. Why is there no Starlight Express movie?
I'm just thinking of like if they tried to
do
what they
it
did
in the style of Cats, with just the
like
faces, like
Thomas the Tank Engine, Starlight Express.
That wasn't a very good musical, was it?
It's got one good song that I like that was on a Michael Crawford compilation CD that I enjoyed.
Michael Crawford was in it?
No, he did a really great album of Andrew Lloyd Webber songs, and he sang some of, like, he's got a really amazing recording of Gethsemane from Jesus Christ Superstar. Right. So, yeah.
Oh, yes. You made her cry.
Yeah.
I felt emotions. I'm not sure if that's code for anything, because I've read some of Jessica's work, and there's emotions and then there's emotions.
No, you feel all the things.
Feelings. Yes, for sure. Lots of feelings.
Lots of feelings of all
below
kinds.
The pants.
In your heart and other places.
Yes, in the mirror. Well, awesome. I think that's it.
Thank you so much.
Definitely go buy the book. We'll do this again sometime, hopefully.
Yeah.
Maybe we'll like dig into a specific topic or movie or something like that.
Oh yeah.
I'm open to suggestions. I don't have a This is where I would usually promote the next show, but I don't have one
Yeah.
scheduled. So you just got to stay tuned. You
Yeah.
got to go like me on the Instagram, or yeah, that's pretty much where I hang out the most. TikTok for you, I guess.
TikTok.
Threads. Find us on Threads.
Yeah, I'm on Threads now.
You
I'm
can't
the same
hashtag
handle.
anything there yet, but we'll see how it goes.
But I'm all over the place. I need to get to, when I get to 10,000
You're not on
followers.
YouTube.
I'm thinking about it.
I was trying to look for you on YouTube today, and there was no YouTube.
It's just I need to learn how to edit videos better. But yeah, I'm thinking.
Well, you can edit videos on TikTok. That's impressive.
Yeah.
See, I'm like a real actual video editor. That's like my profession.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't understand how to do it on TikTok. Like I saw it happen once. My friend showed me, but I'm like, it's too weird for me.
Yeah, well, it's fun. Well, thank you for having me on.
Yes, thank you. Like, share, subscribe. You guys, I'm like 100 and something people away from 1,000 subscribers on YouTube. So if you haven't already, you know, what's wrong? Like, it doesn't hurt you. You don't have to watch all my stuff, but you can help me fight the algorithm, you know, get me to at least 1,000. Maybe by the end of the summer. Come on, help me out. Share this if you liked it, you know, tell people about the show if you like it. I'll be back next Thursday with my normal podcast, Bon Pod, where I just talk to mostly musicians and cool people that I know, not necessarily about Phantom of the Opera. And we got another good review for Jessica from Andrea. Hello, Andrea. Thanks for coming. Yeah, go check us out on our social medias and like, share, subscribe, and comment below.
Like, share, subscribe, comment below. Like, share, subscribe, comment below. Like, share, subscribe, comment below. Make me a sensation. It's karma for your soul.
And Spotify, we're on Spotify. This will be on Spotify too. Go get my numbers up on Spotify. And we have one last comment here. Really enjoyed this live. Lots of interesting. Thank you, Andrea. Definitely, if you want more interesting info, you got to go to Jessica's TikTok. Okay, that was my post-credit scene. See ya.